Everyone, and welcome to Read This Now, the weekly webcast where Brad, Gustafson, and I share two books that we love and we think you should read. When, Brad?
Immediately. That was going to be the hashtag. Read this immediately, but I couldn't spell immediately consistently, so we had to say read this right now.
That's right. Too many letters. We had to break it down, right? Only one syllable words. That's all we could deal with. How are you, my friend?
I'm so good. We were just connecting pre-show, and I was saying my reading life is on fire. I feel like I've hit the reading gold mine. The last 3 books I've read, or one I'm in the middle of, but so just have been so, I can't even explain it. And I get to talk about one of those 3 today, Jen. So
yay, that's exciting. I love it when that happens. So get right to it. Let's hear it. What book are you real jazzed about this week?
Okay, I do want to do, I'm going to get there in 10 seconds. I got to say, I was wanting to see the Dune movie, but I didn't. It just didn't work out. I stumbled upon the book, so I started that. I'll be able to talk about that in a week or 2 whenever I finish it, but that has been good.
Yes, and that's an older book, so that's exciting.
Yeah, and it doesn't even feel like it was written in the 60s. I don't know what that would feel like, but it feels almost like it was just written, still really relevant and cool. But anyway, that wasn't really what I wanted to talk about, although it's bubbling out of me how much I'm enjoying it, so I had to say that.
Yay.
So the funny story, Jen, is I'm chuckling to myself a week ago. I'm reading this book, and I'm like, this thing is so good. And then I'm reading and I'm like, wait, I think this reminds me of a book Jenn has talked about. So then on Twitter, I had to kind of give you a hard time. I'm like, why has no one told me about this book? And you're like, well, I kind of did tell you about that book, Brad.
Like 100 times.
And you were right. That could, you know what? That could be the name of our show. If we ever had to change titles, it would be you were right, or Jenn was right, because it is true. It is true. So the book that Jenn was trying to tell us all about, maybe you listened better than I did. It was Call Down the Hawk, and it is incredible, people.
I know.
So I've learned long ago not to compete with Jenn's book talks. So I will just speak from the heart, and then for the detailed synopsis that actually makes sense, you can go back to listen to her book talk on it. But what I loved about this book, it was so unique and original. It takes place, I would say, kind of fantasy land. There's a land of dreamers where a small percentage of the population, they are dreamers. You don't really know who they are. But the thing that these dreamers can do is they go to sleep and they dream, and when they wake up, something from their dream is with them. So they bring it back. So if they dream about like an amazing meal from Applebee's, that's kind of what's on my mind right now. Like that would be right on my desk when I woke up, right? How cool is that? Cool until you start dreaming about weird stuff like flying cows, or, I don't know, just weird, or motorcycles that don't run on fuel, just all kinds of stuff. Or get this one's wild. You dream about yourself, and then a replica comes back. And then what if that's a reoccurring dream? What would that do to your life and the world? Like just wild. But I would say kind of the main story arc centers around 3 brothers. They're called the Lynch brothers, and they couldn't be more different from one another. Matthew, he's not a literal dreamer, but he's kind of just like go with the flow. Nothing seems to faze him. Everyone loves him and laughs at his jokes. He doesn't have a strong sense of urgency. Contrast that with his brother Declan, who is incredibly irresponsible and safety. Like he's crunching numbers to make sure every move in his life is low profile and safe and risk, avoids risk. And then there's Rowan on the other end of the spectrum, who's just dangerous and doesn't really care about much of anything. And he happens to be the dreamer of the brothers. And there's so much more to it. I don't know how much I should say and not say. Usually when I book talk, Jenn, I don't know about you, but there's a point in the book where I don't want to start. You get to, I don't know, halfway or so, and you maybe don't go too much into it. So everything I said is kind of sort of in the beginning or throughout the book. But they encounter, there are these people called visionaries, and there are also these people called moderators, but the moderators are trying to kill the dreamers because they don't want the world to end, and they think the dreamers are going to end the world just because they could dream of a catastrophic fire and that would happen, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, these moderators are kind of hunting down the dreamers, but they need help because they just need help. So they've enlisted the help of visionaries, and visionaries are kind of like dreamers. They just they have these visions. So the moderators use them to try to find the dreamers, and it's wild. It is wild. It is wild. It is wild. I couldn't put it down, and it made me laugh and smile. And then I like did this happy dance, Jen, because it's a trilogy. So
Yes.
anytime you read a book you love and then you see the word trilogy, you're like, oh yeah, life is good. So for all of those reasons and more, and the fact that Jen recommended it, I recommend you read Call Down the Hawk right now by Maggie
Stiefvater.
Stiefvater. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. This is one of the happiest days of my life, Brad, because I am such a huge Maggie Stiefvater fan. I've read everything she's ever written. I own many of her books and have kept them, which is a real sign for me because even though I'm a librarian, I don't keep that many books. I end up giving many, many of them away. So if I keep a book, that means it's like, as Mr. Shu would say, it's like a heart print book. Like it's made a impact on me in some way. And I loved the trilogy that precedes the one that you're reading right now. It's like the prequel to the Dreamer trilogy. And that is the Raven Boys trilogy, which is where we get to know those three Lynch brothers and a whole other cast of characters before, and we get to learn the story of the ley line and all of that, which you've heard of in this book. And I can't tell you the number of conversations I had with people going, wouldn't it be wonderful if Maggie Stiefvater wrote another trilogy that was just around Ronin and blah, blah, blah. And so when that happened, it was like a dream come true. And then to have you finally read them and love them, we're like, yes, it's so exciting to me. I love her books so much. Yes. Love them.
Yeah. I had never heard of her. Hadn't connected. She wasn't part of my life yet, but now she is. So the other cool thing is, usually my kids, they have their own unique taste as readers. They're pretty voracious readers. And so I don't expect a lot when I'm book talking at home, but I did share this one with them and all three of them were enthralled. Like, I want it next. It was a little mini fight about who got this book next. So there's something about the storyline that resonated with all three of my differently aged kids too. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I just Maggie Stiefvater is one of those writers who I just marvel at her brain, like the things that she comes up with, the intricacies in these stories is remarkable to me. I could never do that. She is a real pro.
She is incredible. I think you could do it, but she is incredible.
You're so sweet. I have to do this show every week just because Brad just talking about how great I am is just a real ego boost for me every week. Thank you, Brad. Of course, I feel the same way about you. And as always, our books are sort of related this week in so much as I'm going to share a book that is unusual for this show because I try very hard to only share new books on the show, which is really what my reading life is made up of anyway, because I'm trying to keep up with whatever's happening right now. But I started a book recently that was published, almost 10 years ago now, because our friend, I'm going to name drop again. I already mentioned Mr. Shu, so now it's time for me to mention Donlin Miller. Our friend Donlin Miller has been like after me to read it. Like she's just been like, Jennifer, I can't believe you haven't read this book. You've got to read it. And so I finally started reading it, and it was like a Maggie Stiefvater book in the sense that I couldn't believe like the storyline, like it's so intricate and complex and yet like so captivating. Like it's one of those, you just keep turning the page because you want to see what's going to happen next, that kind of thing. And also, it's like a Maggie Stiefvater book in so much as the characters I felt like are ones that you kind of really start to care about very quickly. And so you want them to be okay. And so the book I'm going to share right now is called Scowler, and it's by Daniel Kraus. And I want
what a cover. Holy cow.
I know. Look at that, right? Okay. And as you read the book, the cover begins to take on even more meaning, which I love. Like it's an intriguing cover just in and of itself, but then as you read it, you're like, oh, these things start to make sense with me. It's for you, at least they did for me. So I want to just read the opening paragraph to this book, and then I'll tell you what it's about, okay? Because this is important. From August 23rd to 24th, 1981, at least 3 large meteorites landed in southeastern Iowa. A prison, a farm, and a bridge were damaged in the impacts. Smaller fragments are still being discovered to this day. Okay, so that's just like sort of the paragraph that starts it. And Scowler, the book itself, takes place in the days leading up to and the days just following the crashing of those meteorites. And in particular, the one that crashes onto the Burke farm, where 19-year-old Rye Burke and his mom and his younger sister, Sarah, are really just trying to earn enough money to stay alive while they wait for someone to buy their farm, which has been for sale for quite a while. In the days that are leading up to when that first meteor lands in their backfield, we get some flashbacks to the time before that when Rye's father lived at home. And we learn in those flashbacks that Rye's father was like a maniacal, violent, abusive sociopath who inspired fear not only in his own family, but also in the county in which they live. Everyone feared Marvin Burke. And during one of those sort of particularly dark rages, Marvin hits his son, Rye, square in the forehead with a baseball bat. In order to try to escape his dad, Rye runs out into the dark forest that surrounds their farm, which is known as Black Glen. And there he has to survive on his own without food or water for several days. During that time between the injury to his head and being dehydrated and being without food and being isolated, he starts to hallucinate about the 3 toys that he has stuffed in his pockets before running off to try to escape his dad. By the time he's found, he is in quite a state. But what I guess sort of the good news is that his dad has been arrested and sent to jail. His mom, of course, immediately takes him to the hospital where they say that Rye has suffered a brain injury that they hope will heal, but that could be re-triggered if he gets a blow to the head again, or he is exposed to extreme magnetism, which will probably never happen, right? Except guess what emits extreme magnetism when it crashes through the Earth's atmosphere and punches a hole right into the Burke farm? That's right.
Meteors.
Right, okay. But remember, the meteor that hit the Burke farm is only one of 3. Another one hit a nearby bridge, but a third one hit a prison not too far from them. And it kind of acts as like an early release program for the prisoners because it knocks down a bunch of walls and the prisoners are able to escape, one of whom happens to be Marvin Burke, who then heads straight home where he is planning to get revenge on his son, who he sees as being the person who landed him in jail in the first place. So that meteor ends up bringing all sorts of impacts. Not only after it crashes do we see Rye start to experience some changes, including the reappearance of his 3 toys from when he was out in the Black Glen, but also the reappearance of his father. And as a reader, we don't know if what's happening is the result of his traumatic childhood giving him flashbacks, this recurring brain injury that's being affected by the magnetism of the meteor, this terrible and dark father, or some combination of all 3. All we know is that we want the Burkes to survive and be okay. And I have to tell you that there are many parts in this book where we're not at all sure that that is going to happen. So it's called Scowler by Daniel Kraus. I want to make sure that I get it right now. And I don't want you to wait like I did 10 years after it's been published to read it. I think you should read it right now. But I want to give a caveat and say that there's some parts of this book that I found hard to read because they're traumatic. It's sort of a content warning. I would put this book squarely in the high school reading age because there's some stuff in it that's a little tough to take without support.
Appreciate the heads up. You can name drop with the best of them, and I love name dropping with you because I feel, and this might be narcissistic, I feel like our name dropping is special. Like, I feel like when we say Donalyn Miller or John Shu, it's out of pure love. It's not just to say their name. It's because, like, we wish we were sitting right next to them, right?
Exactly. For real.
Yeah. And I do want to add to that, Donalyn Miller has been in our school. Like, she has walked these hallowed halls. So
I know she has. I know. She loved that experience too. I remember hearing all about it. Maybe someday I will be able to walk those hallowed halls as well.
That would be incredible. I will also say, just because you'll appreciate it, like literally people to this day still talk about her and refer to those conversations. Like just this last week, it's probably been referenced 3 times. Like how often does that happen when someone, like that was, I don't know, 5 years ago or more. Yeah. So anyway.
That's her magic for sure. Yeah. And I just love spending time with her because I hope that some of it will rub off on me. Like that's all. I just reach out and rub, hoping that some of it will come off on my fingers.
I'm with you on that. Thank you for letting me like be a teeny part of the name dropping. Now I feel really good. And now I can share a really special resource for everyone who just wants to check out some of the other books Jenn and I have talked about over the last few years. You should check out bit.ly/read_this_now, and it's all there, right, Jenn?
Absolutely. All of it, all of our name dropping, but more importantly, all of the books that we've read over the past 3+ years and all of our videos too, in case you want to hang out and watch them. Until next week, of course.
Yes, and Jenn, I do another time. I want to talk to you about this title. I need to have a conversation with you another day about the title. I have questions, okay?
Okay. All right, sounds good. Until then, y'all, happy reading and we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.